And welcome back. As we go ahead and continue looking at C, let's go now ahead and see how this programming language handles loops. So of course we are going to see some very familiar structures here, which of course let's start off with our while loop. And this is not anything of course we aren't familiar with. We of course a while loop simply just loops through a block code as long as the condition is true. So in this simple example, we're just setting I to 0, and we're saying as long as I is less than 5, we're going to go ahead and just print that value out on a new line and then increment. We also have do while loops, which again is something we're familiar with if we've been working with languages like Java. It's simply just another variant of the while loop. All right. How this works is, well, we got to execute that code block once before checking that condition to see whether or not it's true, and then repeating if that condition is true. Again, very similar to what we have seen in previous iterations. Now, we of course can also do for loops here in C. And these are really helpful, for example, when we know exactly how many times we're going to go through a loop. So in this case, we have a for loop that's going to go 5 iterations. And so we can say I is equal to 0, I is less than 5, I plus plus. Again, very similar language to what we've seen. Now we, of course, can also nest loops or put loops inside of one another. And this is, of course, very handy when we do things like, arrays and sorting and stuff like that. So in this example, you can see we have a outer loop and an inner loop. The outer loop in this case is going to execute 2 times, and the outer loop or the inner loop will execute 6 times, the outer loop 2 times. So again, things that we're already very familiar with, so we're not going to spend too much time with the logistics of how all these work. Now, of course, we also have break statements. And break statements, as we are very familiar with, are used to jump out of a loop with an exit condition here for us. So in this example, we looked for seeing if at any point I is equal to 4. If it does, it breaks out, ending that loop and moving on with execution. Then, of course, we also have continue statements that we can use, and continue statements work very similar to break statements. However, what they do is they skip the rest of the execution. So when we hit this continue here with I equals 4, it's not going to do this. It's going to skip out and come back up to the top, allowing us to continue on with iteration for that next value. And let's go ahead and take an example of how that would actually look here in C. And you can see I've created a simple loop that's simply just going to add up numbers and return us a value. So again, this is very easy for us to use because we're already very familiar with this. So let's go ahead and give this a quick run. And we're just going to enter in numbers to be added. And so let's just do something sequential just for easy purposes. Let's just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have to do a value that's less than 0. So let's just say -1. Hit enter. And we get the total of the numbers entered was 15. Very easy. Let's just do one more. Let's just do really simple one. Let's just do 1, 2, 3, -1. And we get the total entered was 6. So again, very easy to use. Wouldn't be hard for me to build a for loop that could do something very similar because, again, the syntax and structure is very, very similar to what we're already used to if we're coming from languages such as Java because, again, those languages come from C.